And I think it's great that she finally has the bravery to sort of face her fears. Whereas with Dutch, this man basically figured out how to have an invisibility cloak and escape whenever he wanted. There was not a moment of hesitation. It didn't even cross his mind. He's like, well, I guess I'm going to have to destroy the Predator. Welcome to Film Fights, where we don't just talk about movies, we make them fight. Today we're doing another episode of Classic Clash and our first official movie in our 80s action tournament bracket, which is really exciting and inspired by a commenter on our channel. In fact, the only commenter on our channel, LogAsp11, who said he really liked our Terminator versus RoboCop. So we're going to do you one better, man. Instead of just doing another one of these, we have a whole bracket planned around it now. So think about if you guys comment, what could happen. This guy he just changed the trajectory of the whole channel for like about a year. So kudos to LogAsp11. Real quickly, if you don't want to hear about our 80s tournament bracket, then you could just check the timestamp down below that I put so much work into every video and just skip straight to the discussion because I care about you. Man, they're not going to think I care about them when I'm laughing.
Yeah, I care about you guys.
I care about you.
At the Film Fights podcast, cousin Kyle, the Fob, and I are excited to announce what we believe to be a first-of-its-kind 80s action movie tournament, pitting the best action movies against each other until we determine the greatest action movie of the 1980s. We have sorted through various online greatest lists and determined the top 16 action movies from that decade. Now, there are a few criteria that you need to be aware of. These are action films, not necessarily adventure films. So while sci-fi action films like Aliens and RoboCop are included, sci-fi adventure films like Empire Strikes Back and Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan are not. No! For movies that are part of a franchise like the Lethal Weapon series, Indiana Jones movies, and the Rambo movies, we've selected the highest regarded film in the franchise. For our first round, we will be evaluating these films on a variety of categories: narrative and pacing, characters, action sequences and choreography, cinematography and special effects, music and sound design, and lastly, themes and motifs. Each category has a different maximum point total based on how important we deem the category to be. The movie with the highest score will advance to the next round. We are really looking forward to this tournament, but we need your help. We have two different models of tournament bracket to choose from, and we would like you to vote on which one you think is best. Bracket A is a classic seeded tournament. Our crack staff spent hours correlating the rankings from multiple greatest lists, aggregating the rankings using a complex process to pre-rank each movie. This approach would protect the highly ranked movies from facing off with each other early on in the tournament. Bracket B is listed by action subgenre. It matches up the best films from different action categories like action comedy, post-apocalyptic, and sci-fi action. In addition to finding the greatest action movie of the 1980s, this approach would also help us determine the best movie in each action subgenre. You can vote on which bracket you like the best by commenting down below or by voting in the poll on my community section on my channel page. One reason we are super excited for this tournament is that we actually haven't seen most of these classic action films on the list. We want to take a fresh look at these 1980s movies with a Gen Z perspective and see which ones still hold up, which ones do not, and ultimately determine the greatest action movie of the 80s.
Let's get into, finally, Aliens versus Predator. Predator 1987 is an action sci-fi film directed by John McTiernan and written by Jim and John Thomas. The story unfolds in the dense jungles of Central America, where an elite team of commandos led by Major Dutch Schaefer, played by Arnold Schwarzenegger, is sent on a rescue mission. However, the mission quickly derails when they find themselves hunted by an unseen extraterrestrial hunter, known simply as the Predator. Utilizing advanced technology and possessing superior physical abilities, the Predator systematically stalks and eliminates the team members, leading to a tense and brutal game of survival. The film is renowned for its intense action sequences, groundbreaking special effects, and iconic portrayal of the Predator, making it a classic in the sci-fi and action genres. Aliens 1986 is a critically acclaimed science fiction action film directed by James Cameron and written by Cameron alongside a story credit to David Giller and Walter Hill. It serves as the sequel to the 1979 film Alien, directed by Ridley Scott. Set 57 years after the events of the first film, Aliens follows Ellen Ripley, played by Sigourney Weaver, as she returns to the alien-infested world of LV-426, this time with a heavily armed contingent of colonial marines. Ripley's initial mission of extermination turns into a desperate rescue operation as they encounter a survivor Newt and face the overwhelming forces of the xenomorphs. The film is celebrated for its intense action sequences, emotional depth, technological innovations, and Weaver's powerful performance, expanding the franchise's lore and setting new benchmarks for the science fiction and action genres. All right, for round one, we have our first section, narrative and pacing, which is worth 10 whole points. I want to start by saying Predator is structured in a very interesting way, as it basically starts off as this very traditional 80s action movie with a elite group of macho troops that go down to do a rescue mission, and then it turns out that there's some sort of government conspiracy attached to it. And that is basically the first 40 minutes of the movie. And then randomly it throws in this slasher element with the alien, which is teased by a spaceship at the beginning, this alien predator that starts kind of taking them out one by one and separating them from each other to the point where you get the showdown between not a final girl, but a final man against the predator. So that is in and of itself kind of an interesting structure. But one thing that I would like to compliment Predator on is its pacing, because I was never bored watching the movie, and despite the weird sort of structure of it, things move along very quickly, and it adds a nice flavor to the movie, as it makes sense that they're not just going to fight this predator, they're on their own mission. They're doing their own thing. That is a well-developed enough story, and it really shows and brings out the team camaraderie and showing how they work as a unit and how they've been working as a unit for a while, and it establishes the dynamics really well. When you see them starting to get taked out, it's almost a little bit jarring that they're getting taken out so fast, I should say.
There were a couple times I felt it was kind of slow. It begins, with all the setup, good stuff, like all the character work at the beginning. And then you sort of have that one big action scene where they get to the first point in their mission. After that, it feels sort of slow for a while. Of course, you have the Predator once in a while taking down one person for an action movie that doesn't have the right kind of pacing or buildup for me. So it feels that we go a long time without an action scene with that kind of focus that the first one has. I wouldn't say it was boring because there's the air of tension around the Predator. I still think it's good, but I think that was maybe a bit of a weakness for me.
I mean, obviously it's an action horror, but I think a lot of it is the thriller part of it, where it's supposed to be super suspense. You're not exactly sure when it's going to hit until it does, right? So I personally don't have a problem with how they paced it, and you're always kind of on your toes, but
and I think I can agree with Kyle a little bit, but when we get to the action section of this, maybe more, because as a narrative and as it was paced, it's interesting, it's unique, and I was invested the whole time. I didn't feel that there was many dull moments in Predator, and that could also be because it's shorter than Alien. Going into Aliens, I think that the movie has a very action-packed second half.
yeah.
And so I think when you get to that second half, it's very rewarding, because the first little bit over a third, I would say, is pretty slow. It's a lot of building up to the big action scene. It's not like Predator where they're there for a completely different reason. From the beginning of Aliens, they know why they're going down there, and they just weren't as equipped for the job as they had initially thought, because they were just a little bit in over their heads. They bit off a little more than they could chew. The build-up is, well, I didn't mind it. I did think it was a tad bit slow, and it could have gotten to the point. And I didn't even watch the director's cut, which apparently adds even more stuff to the first half. But
oh yeah, I feel like it was just I think it was 20 minutes, 25 minutes, or before they even went out, started going out. I didn't have too much of a problem with that first part, as much as once they actually got on the colony and they were exploring the colony. I feel like it was just too long before anything happened. I think it was we're 50 minutes into the movie, I'm pretty sure it was, and it was
He was fighting sleep.
Nothing has happened. You haven't seen any monsters. It's just been like no xenomorphs have been spotted. We haven't seen anything scary.
I was surprised with how much I enjoyed that actually. What I like is that it shows a lot of effort that went into preparing the setting for the story. They care about what's happening in sort of the lore. I think it ties in well to the idea of people don't really get it when they weren't there. And I think it's aged very well because I think if one person came back from a mission and just made up this crazy story, probably nobody would believe them. And I think all the characters do a good job of approaching that, how it completely breaks down when they see the full reality of it.
And to your point, well, I didn't mind that personally. Like I wasn't like, can we get a move on?
And it's like
I
if
could
you're-
kind of understand
the
what you're
movie
talking
is
about.
just too long. Like they could have cut out like at least 10 minutes or 15 minutes.
I wouldn't say 10. I would say maybe like 5. I feel like you could have trimmed 5 minutes, but like when you're only talking about like a 5 minutes, I don't hold it too much against the movie. Going into sort of the setting aspect of this, I think that for Aliens particularly, it was very important to spend time at the beginning establishing a world that is foreign to us, whereas in Predator, it doesn't need to establish the jungle. It's a jungle. We
Mhm.
know what a jungle looks like. They did a good enough job just with the atmosphere of the jungle because we've all been in that setting before, and Predator kind of has that built-in thing going for it, whereas Alien doesn't, which is why it's important that it really spends time fleshing out its world, making that world come to life. And I think the set design in Aliens by proxy is just super impressive. It does a good job of sort of showing, okay, something happened here. We can see the acid marks, and then you get to that layer where you start seeing these organic alien matters, and it starts building up to that. I didn't once feel like, oh, we're just on some movie set. And I think that really adds to the story and the atmosphere and the claustrophobia of that movie. But when we're talking about pacing for like an action movie in particular, Predator's probably a little bit more favorable to me. And that could just because the runtime's shorter as well. But like that is a very tight, all killer, no filler experience. And Aliens by design is more atmospheric, even if it is an action centric version of Aliens.
Here's what I'll say then. I think that's a valid point to make
Yeah.
against Aliens, but I think it actually applies more so to Predator because what you have is one very long action scene at the beginning, and then I would say for an action scene where one party is fighting another, you don't get that for a very long time. You get some cool action where it's the Predator assassinating somebody, but I think for that kind of fully fledged action scene, there's less distance and time in Aliens between that to keep the audience entertained in that way.
Yeah, I can see that. I guess my one last offense for Predator before we kind of go into the scoring of things for this round in particular is that it's not maybe action in the traditional sense where there's
That's
just
what
like
I was
a
trying
t-
to say.
yeah.
I don't
I don't think
Leave
we
the
should
motto.
judge it as
Yeah.
like a just straight action
It's-
movie. And Alien's definitely more of that than Predator is.
I just think it's still action, but it's very tension built right to the action. And it's almost like a jump scare, but instead of like something pops out, it's like action pops out. And so
Yeah.
and it's still like action. You get Carl Weathers' character Dylan with his arms getting like exploded off
Yeah.
and he's trying to get him. And so I think they do stuff like that enough throughout the movie before you get to the climax, which I guess we should talk about a little bit. Maybe not the action of it, but just the fact that you get to this climax, Arnold's character Dutch, and then the Predator. One thing I really like about that from a narrative perspective, they set it up so perfectly. And if you don't really think about it, you might not notice it, but it goes from the Predator can see them, but they can't see the Predator, to the Predator can't see Arnold, but he can see the Predator. It goes from Arnold and all his men shooting into the abyss, not knowing where anything is, just blindly hoping to hit something, to the Predator just blindly shooting everywhere, trying to hit something, but not knowing where Arnold is. There's a very nice role reversal there that makes the ending very satisfying. I want to talk about Aliens' climax. It's tense, it's gripping, it's really cool when you see Ripley go down into that dungeon. I think it's a great moment for her character, which we'll get into later. of her finally facing her fears, getting down there, rescuing Newt, fighting the mother xenomorph, I guess we'll call it, then going into that mech thing to fight the xenomorph that we seen her use before, so it's kind of set up, which I always like little things like that. They didn't need to, but they did that, so I appreciate it.
Well, they set up that they had wondered what was making the eggs, and then they also set up what she was going to use to fight it.
Exactly. And so from a narrative perspective, that's very satisfying. The sort of her like using the airlock to pump it out, which isn't that what she did sort of in the first movie as well? Or I can't remember. I haven't seen it in a while. It's a nice full circle moment, not just Ripley as a character, but for the movie as well. Does it stretch believability that she didn't get sucked through this airlock? Maybe.
She was climbing up a ladder against the pressure.
That's something I thought was silly, but I'm going to apply that to actions.
Yeah, it's a little goofy, but there's stuff that you could make against Predator as well, to be fair. So like I'm not gonna fully hold that against it. I did feel like I was going into Transformers territory all of a sudden with the mech coming out. It was still cool, but I was like, oh, we're doing this.
What I really appreciated was that it's something that you expressed, I think, before the podcast. Aliens is a movie that can understand what you're thinking and it'll immediately have an answer to it.
Yes.
So when I was watching Ripley fight the alien queen, is that what it is, or the xenomorph queen?
Yeah, something like
Mama
that.
Xenomorph.
We'll call her Mama Xenomorph.
I'm not calling it that. So when she was fighting the alien queen, I didn't feel like there was something it could do about the suit that it just wasn't doing. Felt like it was trying to do everything it could to try to kill her. It was like, yep, it's reasonable that it gets stuck under the suit, and then, I mean, it's not going to stay on forever, so then it falls out. So I think that final climax scene, more so than even the rest of the movie, had a lot of good logic applied to it. Thematically, I think it worked very, very well.
All right, we're gonna do Predator first, so everyone write your scores down. Yeah, say what it is.
9.5.
9.5. I'm going to go with an 8 for Predator.
I went an 8 for Predator.
All right, now let's do Alien.
9.
I am going to give Aliens a 9 out of 10.
I'm gonna give it a bigger 9.
Next, we're going to do characters and development, which is a 5-point category, a little bit lower because I feel like it's part of the story a bit more, and also these movies aren't as much about the characters, but more about the story and the action anyway. What I will say I like about Dutch, and by proxy say one of my favorite things about Predator, is just how testosterone pumping the entire Predator movie is.
Pretty much every person on the Predator cast.
Yeah, it's like that one scene where Dutch and Dylan see each other for the first time and they clasp hands and their biceps are bulging. Yeah. I'm like, this is the exact energy.
It's iconic for a reason.
Exactly that I'm looking for. I like how they had this plan at the beginning to sort of secretly, stealthily like take over this base. And then Dutch is like, nah, screw that. I'm picking up a truck and throwing it in. And now we're blowing everything up. Yep. And as a character, is Dutch deep? No, not at all. Not. I mean, he's a meat.
They're very different kinds of protagonists.
Yes, he is a meathead man that wants to avenge his fallen compatriots. He plays that really well, and that's it for Ripley. I'll tell you what she doesn't have. She doesn't have that masculine, hyper testosterone energy. But she is a woman, so I guess it's a little unfair to talk about the testosterone pumping.
Estrogen.
So I hold her to a different standard. However, as much as I hate to say this, she has more depth than the character of Dutch.
Bad idea.
I think
Dutch has more depth than you think he does.
One thing that I really like about her character and her character arc is she is very afraid to confront the aliens at first, and that is like totally reasonable and like rational, but slowly throughout the movie it's like she's like, all right, I'm gonna get more involved. All right, I'm taking control of this car, ramming it through this door so I can save some of the men, and at the point to the end where she literally goes and faces her fears directly to save Newt, which I thought was a good, powerful, full circle moment for her character. And also when Newt comes and says mommy, and I think that sort of having that embrace with Newt, having sort of Hicks as this like surrogate like father figure, getting this sort of dysfunctional family, I think is really interesting. And I think it's great that she finally has the bravery to sort of face her fears, Whereas with Dutch, this man basically figured out how to have an invisibility cloak and escape whenever he wanted. There was not a moment of hesitation. It's like, it didn't even cross his mind. He's like, well, I guess I'm going to have to destroy the Predator. It's a different mentality. She's certainly got more depth. She's less of a caricature. It probably makes her a better character, I guess, on paper, if you want to say such things. But what do you have to say?
buddy.
No, I still consider them about even, actually. You have to consider the scope of what they can accomplish. So with a movie like Predator, Arnold accomplishes all he can. He does have legitimate good character moments. He has a great chemistry with Carl Weathers' character. He is shown to be a good leader and knows how to assign his people to positions well, shown that he cares about them very much, and that he was always willing to do whatever it took to avenge them. And like you said, it was a good moment at the end where he looks back at the smoke and thinks about all of them. I mean, it does not have to be particularly deep to be especially strong.
I will say one
Probably
thing
just good to save time.
about Alien. Now that we're done with the main characters, I think I was pretty invested in the side characters in Alien, whether I liked them or not. I hated Burke, as most people would, but I was invested in his character. You can't say he's a bad character. He accomplished being hateable.
I felt a lot more emotion towards the supporting characters in Aliens.
Yeah, I'd have
Not
to
only
agree.
like knowing that some of them could make it out and really wanting them to make it out, but knowing that some of them could make it out and I really don't want them to.
Yeah, literally.
So that definitely invested me in the movie a lot, and the supporting characters of Aliens played a super significant role in investing me in that story. The supporting characters in Predator, not
Not as
quite
good.
that strong, but still very good and like above passable for movie standards, I think.
Yeah, well, what I think both movies do really well with its supporting characters is having them be very different and have different sort of skill sets and different personalities. I'll talk on the Predator side since it didn't get much focus yet. I really liked Dylan, Carl Weathers' character.
Yeah.
In fact, I actually think he's a better character than Burke, only because Burke was such an a-hole businessman through the end that it just felt incomprehensibly illogical, to the point where it's like, your goal should be to survive at this point, and with everything you've seen, you're still thinking about money. And you could say, well, that shows to like the immunity that rich people or businessmen feel that they have till the very end, and if you want to go that route, that's fine. But
I think it wasn't that. It
Yeah.
was more like eventually that mentality becomes, I can either live and get a lot of money or I'll just die and it won't matter. That I understood. It really made me hate him. And Dylan provides a different goal. He wasn't betraying them. He lured Dutch in with false pretenses.
yeah,
And I think his character succeeded at making that feel a little more within reason.
yes, exactly. It's like he sort of lost his close friends on the real mission that he sent them down to do first, and then they got skinned, and it's like, well, Dutch is the only guy that's better that I know can pull off this job, but he won't do it if I tell him the truth. And so there's a little bit of conflict there, and you can tell he feels kind of bad about it. And then to the point where he sees the Predator for the first time, he's like, all right, bro, I feel bad. I'm gonna go try to kill this thing now. When it comes to Burke versus that character individually, I vastly prefer Carl Weathers' character, and that doesn't mean Burke's bad, because he serves his purpose for the story. I think Mac was good because I liked how much you could tell he cared about Blaine, who was like the testosterone sexual tyrannosaurus guy. That guy was awesome.
You're bleeding, man.
I ain't got time to bleed.
There was a lot of very quotable lines in Predator. Billy was great. I like how when they asked him, he's just like,
We're all gonna die.
Want to be Hudson so bad.
well, I'll get to husband soon. I really liked Billy. I liked his purpose in the story. I liked Mac. I really liked Blaine. I think that the real thing making it competitive is Hudson, because Hudson is just such an enigmatic presence where everything he says is just like pure gold, and I love it.
Kind of agree with everything he says.
He's like,
That's it, man. Game over, man. It's game over.
that was really good, and I think he's by far the best side character in all of these movies combined. But when it actually comes to the overall cast, I'm a little bit split. I actually like Billy a lot, Blaine a lot, Mac a lot, and the other people I can really kind of just take it or leave it, except for Hudson, who I think is really awesome. I wanted to real quickly talk about just the villains slash antagonists, which is, the Predator
Yeah, that's important.
and the aliens. Because we already kind of touched on it in our narrative section, but the Predator is a very interesting character because he's not just like your random mindless monster. He's not like a Jason Voorhees or a Michael Myers. He's actually got this code of honor and chivalry. They build up to that very nicely where they didn't kill the girl because she wasn't armed. It shows, okay, he's doing this for sport. Some of the people he just skinned and left there at the beginning because they weren't worth the trophies. Whereas these people that actually gave him problems and shot him, he's like, all right, I'm collecting their skulls because they gave me a little bit more of a challenge.
I think another moment that was good with the Predator, you have the dynamic of seeing him get injured and like sort of do alien first aid on himself, but just having that moment makes him feel more akin to the regular soldiers.
Yes.
Make him seem, oh, well, he's not so different.
Yeah, I mean, like, if you think about it as like he's just a hunter and it's like he's trying to do this for the sport, for the challenge. There's actually an interesting contrast between him and Dutch where the Predator, he could be like, oh, well, these guys are a little more than I can handle, so I'm going to skedaddle back to my planet. But he doesn't do that. He goes back in, and the same thing happens to Dutch where he could have been like, oh, now that I'm invisible and I can escape, I could just skedaddle back to the chopper. He doesn't do that. And it doesn't even cross both of their minds. Maybe I should leave. No, they want to stay. They want to fight. That's what they're there for. They're warriors.
I feel like it's kind of hard to compare the two, obviously, because the aliens are they're like more entities.
Yeah, they're like bugs, so they don't have.
Yeah, they're more like bugs.
They don't have an opinion on existence or anything.
Smart bugs, but
how I would describe it is that I really appreciate that the aliens work in a very consistent way. The aliens are introduced as this kind of survivor species, and they do everything they can to survive and dominate everything that's around them and their environment and everything. I thought it was really cool that they have that consistent logic with how they work. They have a consistent time on how long it takes for a human to cocoon, and then how long it takes for one of the aliens, once they burst out of somebody, how long it takes for that to become a fully fledged xenomorph.
Without further, I think we can get into the scoring now.
Yeah.
4.5.
We'll give it a 5 out of 5.
I also gave it a 5. I don't see what it could do better.
I got a 4 for aliens.
4 for aliens.
Mine was gonna be a 4 for aliens, actually. And then our discussion changed it to a 5.
Next is our most heavily weighed category, action sequences and choreography, with 15 possible points being earnable. We'll start with Predator, as we've been doing so far. Kyle kind of mentioned this. It's weirdly paced. You have one really big, explosive action scene towards the beginning of the movie that is completely disconnected from every other action scene in this movie, which is basically the men failing at fighting against the Predator. You see a lot of ultra violence in that sense of the Predator taking out certain people, but they're much more in spurts. It's tension, Predator kills someone, tension, Predator kills someone, but each time you learn something new about the Predator, but that would be more of a story thing. When it comes to action, Aliens feels much more, and weirdly enough, traditional. Once it starts, it's a bunch of guys shooting down a bunch of aliens. I like both the action in these movies, and that's just kind of to open up the subject. Kyle, Tanner, what do you think about the action?
It's important to keep in mind when comparing the two of them of what they're trying to do with their action, because on surface level, you're going to be looking at Alien and be like, well, the action is clearly much better in Alien because it's nonstop, constant action. There's like 3 action sequences in Predator. But I think it's important to think about what are you trying to do with your action sequences. And Predator is clearly trying to keep it more concentrated and trying to keep you in suspense. So they're not going to be as much. Well, after the suspense for Alien, it's going to be less suspense. It's like it's more going to be more constant, but then it's suspense in Predator, something happens, then it's suspense again. So there's just always going to be suspense even after something big happens.
They're structured differently.
It's a different structure. So
I agree with you mostly, but I'll say that I wouldn't say even the latter half of Aliens is constant action. It definitely has more than at the beginning, and it builds up to having more frequent action scenes, but it does take great care to show this is the action scene and then this is the discourse that follows that. So there's the action scene of, are they just called face huggers?
I don't remember.
Okay,
Being
well,
called face huggers.
yeah, so that creature attacking Ripley in the medical station, and then they have a discussion because of that with Burke.
They have a great discussion with Burke.
We grease this rat son of a right now.
That's when an action scene should have started, but there is something in between that and the next action scene,
Right.
which makes sense. And then after that action scene, which is a long one and probably my favorite, there is, once they lose Newt, then there's another sequence of events of saying, okay, this is how we're going to finish it up. And then Ellen finally deciding, okay, I got to go back in for Newt. And then that's another long scene with a lot of tension and build up. It surprised me because I thought it was going to start when you see the alien queen, and then they turn tables a little on you and they're like, okay, now I'm going to threaten it. And it's like, oh, it's intelligent. I would say just as much as Predator makes great use of tension, that made great use of tension as well. I especially like the last action scene of that. Says alien queen definitely feels like it's trying to kill Ripley. Ripley had a very creative way of dealing with it.
Yeah, I will say about Alien, I think it's got like some real brutal, like white knuckle, edge of your seat action. The first one, which James Cameron makes very chaotic in nature, like, oh man, they're cooked, and the inexperienced commander doesn't know how to command these people, and so then Ripley kind of has to take charge and save the day. Then the next one with the face hugger, like that was really intense for completely different reasons, because yeah, if it was just that, we'd be okay, but it's the fact that they're trapped in here and you put a time limit on that. How fast before, because they'll realize eventually something's up, but like how fast can they get there before it impregnates them with one of those xenomorphs, and they don't have any weapons. And then you have the next one where it's basically, all right, we have our escape route almost ready. We just need to get there. This time they have a little bit more of the handle on things, but the difference is they're running out of ammo. And then the aliens were on the ceiling during that one sequence. I'm like, they're in the ceiling. They're in the ceiling. And when they realize it, it's always like there's something that's sort of impeding them. They never really have the upper hand. And then you get that last action sequence with Ripley, which is actually my least favorite in the entire movie. I don't know. It felt a little out there for me. And that's just me personally. And then with the airlock, I don't know why, but that was like, okay, okay, buddy. But I think
was climbing up a ladder with the airlock still open.
Yeah, the thing I was thinking in that was like, you're not gonna climb away.
Yeah.
From
maybe
outer
with
space
with the arm lock, with the arm lock around the ladder.
She
like,
pulls down
maybe.
something to open the airlock. So why doesn't she just close that close the airlock? Instead, she goes all the way up and then pulls something. I'm like, even if that's how it works or something like that, you don't need to tell me that's how it works. It's a dumb 80s action movie. I know that this thing opens it, so just make that thing close it. It just makes more sense.
And I agree. That was one thing I specifically thought, like, why does she have to climb up? On the Predator side, his action, I guess we'll say, unfolds. He kills them all in like different ways each time. And each time you learn a new piece of the puzzle of, all right, this is what the Predator can do. These are new things that Dutch can add to his database on how he can possibly beat the Predator at the end, which is why I like that the last action scene is him going on.
And combining everything he's learned.
Yes. Combining all of his knowledge so far. It feels like this is the test. In concept, I probably like how Predator does it better. However, in execution, once you get to that scene with the Predator hand-hand fighting with aliens, it's just him going,
Yeah, they didn't have martial arts training when wherever planet.
Predator's last action scene didn't age too well.
Like I said, conceptually, it's really awesome.
I agree.
I rock with it. Actually, and I would go as far to say that I think everything leading up to that still holds up and still looks good when he's shooting the arrow. Everything leading up to that was perfect. It holds up great. I think the Predator killing them a lot and that effect with the invisibility cloak works great. That last action scene, which is unfortunate because it is the last standing impression. I know I complained about the last action scene in Alien, but like this was worse.
I feel the same. Because it was like Alien. I have one thing that I really didn't like. Predator, it's like sort of waiting for the next part to happen.
It's just Arnold getting smacked around after we've seen this alien can move so fast and just fly all over the place. The only thing I can really give credence is he just loves playing with his food. His version of monologuing, because he doesn't really talk, and he just thinks, oh, I got Arnold. That's the only way I can see it. But even still, if I would have liked to see him beating up Arnold without just psh, psh. The 80s choreography really kicked in for that last action scene. Alrighty, let's get Predator.
14 for Predator.
I'm going 13 out of 15 for Predator. Mostly because of that last action scene.
Descending order, I went 12 out of 15.
All right. Aliens, 12. Alrighty.
Aliens, 14.
Aliens, 14.
Category 4, we have cinematography and special effects, which is our last heavily weighted category with 10 points on the line. I think
I'll start, buddy.
Oh,
Step aside.
Okay, I'll.
First of all, I think Predator has really great shots, and I'm like, the like POV type things with the Predator, so cool, like evil, kind of Evil Dead vibes a little bit, but I don't know. I thought it was awesome, and I really liked how like
Great slasher vibes.
very good slasher vibe. I think Predator is the best slasher to ever exist.
I'm gonna say it now.
Ooh, you just said that on this podcast.
Have you seen Terminator?
The cinematography is amazing. The special effects are overall pretty freaking good, except for that one spaceship scene. But it's not really like they were cooking with the one in Aliens either.
Well, a spaceship scene looks better in Predator. They just only have one.
Yeah.
I think the Predators look held up good enough in full view. And I thought the laser beam was pretty cool too.
In some regards, I do think it holds up better than Aliens because it doesn't have to do as much. Aliens has to craft an entire fictional world and planet with spaceships all over the place. It's kind of that
It's like a jungle.
you run into that like that
Predator.
that Terminator thing where it's like, wow, that looks really great for 84, but it's 84. And so and you get into the same thing with Aliens where you're like, wow, that looks pretty good for 86, but it's 86. There are things that I still think look very impressive, but Predator takes place in the jungle. The real special effect is just the thermal vision and then the cloaking. And then you have a lot of practical effects with Dylan's arms getting like blown off, like chests being blown out, and some like laser beams, which do look kind of dated, but I like Star Wars, so it's almost like my brain doesn't recognize dated laser beams.
Yeah, me too.
The alien is literally just a guy in a suit. So It does
look really good.
It's a 7-foot tall Kevin Peter Hall in a suit, but he's still a guy in a suit. So it's more convincing because it has to do less for me. Aliens has a much bigger job. The mother alien, you had to have a bunch of puppeteers, cranes, wires, everything just to make it move convincingly.
And it moved pretty convincingly.
Like, I prefer how the mother alien looks to like modern CGI, because modern CGI is also noticeable. I was gripped by it, and I could tell this maybe isn't literally alive, but it was so tangible. I didn't know how they did it. I could tell, like, are there some practical things going on?
James Cameron did a blood ritual, like
he sacrificed newborn babies.
Oh, that's my bad.
So I like that we use the comparison to our RoboCop and Terminator video, because in that I say that I actually really like the special effects in Terminator, and even mostly preferred it to how things look now. That's how I feel about the Predator. So his costume design and everything about that, and his face once it's revealed, 100%, I love it. Looks amazing. The thing is, this is put up against Aliens.
Yeah.
And Aliens, I'm like, okay, this is now setting a new bar.
They looked pretty real. They looked pretty real, and I don't know how they looked pretty real.
Like, the only bad special effects in Aliens
is the spaceship.
Is the spaceships.
Wow.
I even like that.
I'm saying like I could, like, the movie could be made if like it was just a higher res. If the movie was like higher res, made it in like you told me it was made in 2010 with the alien scene.
This
like I would probably believe it.
Well, this is the test I do. Would this look better as modern CGI or the practical effects in this movie, or whatever effects they use? When I look at the spaceships, I think this would have looked better with modern CGI. When I look at the Queen Xenomorph, if this was with modern CGI, it would look like. So I was like, I'm so glad that the practical effects from the 80s were at its peak, because this is so gripping. I was looking into how they did things. For the smaller aliens, they just had like like dancers and ballerinas in suits. And then like with the big alien, they had like obviously a lot of cranes. The way that they did that looked so good. And then just even little things like how there's this exploding background. The environment was so convincing to the point where like there's times you forget I'm watching this movie from 1986. And so there are more moments that stick out to me as that hasn't like aged the best special effects wise because they have to do so much more. And we're just talking about like special effects right now.
Yeah.
We're not even talking about overall cinematography. Predator looks good. Aliens, it's just at a different level. The contrast, the style. James Cameron basically, apparently someone was trying to light it more like a traditional 80s movie. Got that guy fired and hired a new guy to light it the way
Awesome.
yeah, you can tell that James Cameron, and you can't, whether you like his movies or you don't like some of his movies, is a man with a vision and purpose, and he knows what he's looking for. And he nailed it. I can't imagine him doing a better job in 1986. It's hard to imagine filmmakers doing a little bit better than that now for the most part, with the practical effects being that main standing and just also the way he lights it. They don't light movies the way they used to sometimes.
Some of the scenes cut too much in both movies. I think both actually, for cinematography specifically, could have done a little bit better. Otherwise, I'm like, the special effects part of this is revolutionary. I just wanted to say that because I think it's significant.
So for Predator, I got it at 8.5.
I'm giving Predator a generous 9.
I went with an 8.
So for Aliens, I got it at a 10.
Aliens is definitely a 10.
I think revolutionary enough special effects have awarded it a 10.
Yes. All right, we're all in agreement.
Yeah.
Basically.
We're gonna go into our 5th category, which is only a 5-point category, but that is music and sound design, which is very important for a movie.
20-point category.
So one thing I would like to say is Alan Silvestri did the score for Predator.
The GOAT. I think we automatically give it a 10.
I love Alan Silvestri's score for this movie. It's very intense, gripping. It fits every scene. It stands out. It's one of those soundtracks that I can listen to when I'm like driving around and not be like, what is this random like setting music? It's like there's some genuinely good pieces here that are just very punchy. It's got a tribal nature to it, but it's got that American muscle military sound to it as well. He cooked, to be quite honest. Aliens is by soundtrack was by James Horner. James Horner's made some great work. I don't think that Aliens is his best work. I think he did his job very well. I think it added to the proper mood of the story. I don't think it's as memorable. I don't think it stands out as much as Predator's soundtrack. When it comes to sound design, like special sound effects, as I was watching both of these movies, I couldn't help but think to myself how I just love 80s sound design because it's so much more crunchy and like gritty than modern sound designs. It's a little bit more rougher around the edges, and it's very satisfying to listen to when someone picks up a gun and it makes this unrealistic like sound, but I don't hate it. In fact, I prefer it. It just makes everything sound so crisp. It
gives a lot of meaning to what happens.
Yeah.
So nowadays in movies, everything feels like goes through some kind of weird audio filter where it's like it tries to be a little too realistic with how things should sound, and in reality, it just takes a lot of the impact away. If someone picking up a gun in an iconic moment wouldn't make a sound in real life, I don't care.
Yeah.
If it's important in the story, have it make a sound.
Exactly. Cool. There's so much texture in the sound design for both of these movies. But when I think about Predator, there's more moments I can think about, like, you know, when Billy laughs and then the Predator copies his laugh and it's like this distorted version. That was really cool. The Predator's sound was the sound that the Predator made was really cool. I also just like the jungle atmosphere that was very like vibrant. All the machine guns, obviously, which is something you have to give to Aliens too, because it has to make up gun sounds for future guns, and I think it does a good enough job. I just think I like Predator's sound design mixed with the music, and also I think Aliens was more, I will say, a little more modern. I think it was, while it still got that 80s grit to it with the sound design, it's still a little bit smoother, and that might make it like technically better, but I don't care. I'm here to share my opinion. Overall, they're both good. I think I would even say great. I just think that Predator is superior to me.
I didn't notice score much in either one, honestly. I didn't know we'd be rating it on that. I mean, just with special effect or sound effects, those things I did notice more in each movie. And I think even if you tell me that Predator had some kind of amazing soundtrack, the most I could give it is like one more point over Aliens in total, because otherwise I think Aliens utilized sound very effectively. Quiet at the right moments, and it is loud and chaotic at the right moments. It's always clear what's happening based off the sound. You can always hear what the characters are saying. Same is true for Predator. I don't consider them very different. Otherwise, all I'll say is I think Predator might have the better sound design if I really came down to it, because I think it plays with it in more cool ways, like you said at the end.
I feel like it's just, and it's not really the movie's fault as much, but it's just a lot more dated in Aliens, I feel like, for the sound effects specifically.
Really?
I don't really notice the soundtrack very much in Aliens 2. It didn't stand out to me at all like the Predator one did. So I'm not really giving it many points for the soundtrack either. For Predator, I gave it a 5.
Predator, I gave it a 5.
Predator, I will give it 5.
For Alien, I got it at a 3.
I can't say that Aliens is middle of the road at all, so I couldn't give it a 3.
Well, 2.5 would be middle of the road.
So I'm going to give it a 3.5.
I feel the same way as you, but I don't work in 0.5, so I gave it a 4.
Our last category is themes and motifs with 5 points possible. Yeah,
Full stop.
But
You okay?
I think.
Okay.
me too. Often even.
I think the themes in Predator are very underrated.
There are some interesting sort of things that you can look at. My favorite being sort of the will of humanity to survive and prevail, even when great losses are taken. I think that's present in both Aliens and Predator. I would say I think Predator does that specific thing a little bit better for me, just because Dutch is a very inspiring character. I think that his will to not just run away, but overcome the challenge in the face of all of his teammates just getting capped is truly like something that gets you going. It makes you like, yeah, I can fight my challenges.
He's a brave guy.
He's a brave guy.
I would say more so than survival is it's sort of a hunt. So there's the hunting aspect of what the Predator uses, because there's that Predator versus prey, which is why it's then like a good name for the movie.
I like that aspect of it. I like the role reversal. Like I said, at the end, Dutch sort of becomes the Predator himself. I just like how brave Dutch is. Well, I guess I can go into masculinity a little bit. How he has a role to fill. His role is as a warrior that is going to do his duty. And I think when it comes to masculinity, that is one of the core tenets: responsibility, doing what you need to do, even if it's hard. It would have been convenient for Dutch to run away, but he's just so ridiculously masculine. Like I said, didn't even cross his mind. And I think that contrasts wonderfully with the femininity of Ellen Ripley, which she has obviously traditionally considered masculine elements of courage and facing her fears, but it shows how compassionate she is and how she sort of connects with people and she cares for people, caring for Newt so much that her care for Newt is what really made her go down and face those fears and go straight into the nest. That motherly instinct within her is so strong. It's an innate feminine trait, just like Dutch is like this pillar of masculinity.
Yeah.
And so it ignites something in me that I is sometimes dormant. You know, it's just like one of those movies you watch. I'm going to do some push-ups once I'm done.
Yeah.
Start doing some working out and pumping iron. I just really like how both movies play with that. Humans versus aliens is, I guess, technically a thing that is here for both movies.
Sort of. But I think
Yeah.
what's nice is that Predator doesn't fill the same role that Alien does.
No.
Because he isn't that otherworldly alien entirely, or he is at first. The point of that is that you learn that he's actually not so different.
He's pretty
Yeah,
human.
there's commonality amongst cultures.
Not so different as in you should feel sympathy, but in an interesting dynamic way.
There's innate factors within living intelligent organisms, even across the planes, wherever it may be, isn't that different than who you are. and you all sort of have commonalities amongst each other. Also, one other thing that is in both movies, the idea that you have to manipulate people to do what you want them to do, because both Dylan and Burke basically said, oh, this is the mission, this is what you're doing, and then
That's not
we're
what
like,
they're doing.
psych, this was for something else. Also, just another thing is, I think it shows that it's never too late for a redemption, because Dylan got himself a redemption last minute where he's like, okay, I screwed up, I'm gonna try my best to make up for it. He gave his life to make up for it.
Yeah, Burke had a great redemption too.
And then it shows that, you know, sometimes it is too late.
Sometimes people are just evil.
And sometimes people are just evil. I think there's a lot of like little interesting ideas that aren't like big, like blow your brain. Wow. They're very simple themes, very simple motifs. It's always fun to watch humanity survive and everything. But I think that these films have enough in there to give it some depth. I can look a little bit beyond the surface of just the action and the fun story and think about the movie just a little bit. You ready to score?
Yes.
I got, for what it is, 5.
For what it is, 4.
I thought for what it is, I put Predator at a 5.
For Alien, I got 3. For what it is.
For Alien, I also have 3.
For Aliens, because that's the movie we're judging, I have it as a 4.
Alrighty. After a lot of mathing, Bob, what is your overall for Predator and Alien?
46.5 for Predator, 41 for Alien.
I have 44 for Predator and 43.5 for Alien,
I have 43 for Predator and 46 for Aliens.
which leads to the grand total of 133.5 for Predator and 130.5 for Aliens, meaning that Predator is the winner of today's episode. Shocking upset. Honestly, I did not think Predator was going to win, but hey, I guess going through the categories is what we decided.
Hey man, you rated it over Aliens.
I don't know how it's going to do on the next one, but I guess we'll find out. Thank you all so much for watching. Remember to comment down below bracket A, bracket B, or go to my community on my channel and vote on the poll. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you later.